Did you know that one of the greatest mysteries of evolutionary biology involves the transformation of marine creatures into beings capable of walking on solid ground? Imagine the first time a fish emerged from the waters, with eyes adapted to the new world and lungs ready to breathe air. But how did these animals achieve this monumental transition? And what did the fish that stayed in the oceans develop to survive the harsh aquatic conditions? Get ready to discover how evolution challenged the waters and shaped life as we know it today. The story of our origins in marine life may seem repetitive, but the process by which living beings migrated from the oceans to solid ground is much more fascinating and complex than we imagine. Knowing that our ancestors began at the bottom of the seas and, over time, developed the ability to live on land opens a door to understanding one of the most extraordinary transitions in the history of evolution. And, of course, the question remains, how exactly did this happen? The journey begins around 410 million years ago. In terms of the Earth's age, which has celebrated its 4.5 billion anniversaries, this is practically yesterday. It was during this period that the first arthropods, a class of invertebrates, began to venture out of the oceans. It was a risky attempt, but eventually, these creatures managed to establish themselves on land. From there, terrestrial life began to expand. A few million years later, other groups of animals followed this path, not only occupying the ground but also conquering the skies. This transition was anything but simple. It required a series of mutations and adaptations in various parts of the body, which took millions of years to occur. One of the most significant challenges was the issue of respiration. In the aquatic environment, breathing is done through gills, which extract dissolved oxygen from the water. However, living on land required a new respiratory system, lungs. These adaptations were not limited to the respiratory system. They spread throughout the body, altering behaviors, morphological structures, and physiological processes. Organisms had to develop completely new ways of moving, feeding, excreting waste, and reproducing outside of water. One of the biggest challenges was the need to support the body. In water, buoyancy facilitates movement and helps support body weight, but on solid ground, gravity became an unrelenting force. To survive outside of water, the first animals needed to develop stronger skeletons, which influenced feeding, the way they perceived the environment, and even the functioning of the heart. This process resulted in the emergence of a more complex heart with 4 chambers, an evolutionary innovation that played a crucial role in adapting to life on land. However, despite these achievements, not all organisms managed to make this transition successfully. Only a small fraction, less than 1%, of fish developed amphibious characteristics, allowing them to live both in water and on land. The vast majority of fish remained in the aquatic environment, where they continued to evolve to cope with the selective pressures of that medium. These fish did not escape the changes. On the contrary, periods of oxygen scarcity forced them to adapt to new ways of life to survive in environments with less available oxygen. To better understand how this transition occurred, we can rely on the expertise of biologist Adalberto Luis Val, a professor and member of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. Val is one of the specialists involved in the project Evolution is a Fact, a book that brings together contributions from 28 renowned Brazilian researchers, offering an accessible and visually rich explanation of the evolutionary process. The work took 3 years to complete and contains the latest scientific discoveries, with examples from research conducted in Brazil. What makes this book special is its simplicity. It was designed to be understood by everyone, without sacrificing scientific depth. Adalberto Val explains that one of the first animals to leave the aquatic environment and start life on land was Tiktaalik rosei, a fish that had significant modifications. Tiktaalik had a larger rib cage and eyes positioned on the top of its head, characteristics that helped it live outside of water. Its fins had also undergone changes. They began to transform into structures resembling limbs, and the animal developed a type of pelvic girdle, which allowed it to support its own weight on land. This type of skeletal adaptation was one of the first steps on the long path to terrestrial life. Breathing was another crucial change for these pioneers of life out of water. The gill system, which worked so well in the aquatic environment, was not sufficient to survive on solid ground. Adalberto emphasizes that this change was one of the most brilliant events in evolution. Instead of breathing dissolved oxygen in the water, as they did with gills, these beings began to inhale atmospheric air directly, which required the development of lungs, highly vascularized internal organs that allowed for efficient gas exchange. But despite these changes, not all animals that developed lungs left the water for good. Adalberto mentions the curious case of Lepidosiren paradoxa, a lungfish found in South America, commonly known as Piramboia. This fish has lungs but, paradoxically, continues to live in water. If it cannot access atmospheric air, the Piramboia can drown, just like any other terrestrial animal. This shows that, even with the evolution of new organs and systems, some beings maintained a dependency on the aquatic environment. There are only 3 groups of fish in the world that possess lungs, and one of them lives in the Amazon. Adalberto highlights that, in addition to Piramboia, there are other fish species that have developed ingenious solutions to deal with the low concentration of oxygen in the region's waters. The Temuida, for example, has a surprising method of respiration. When the water becomes low in oxygen, it swims to the surface and gulps down water mixed with air. From there, the air undergoes a completely different process than occurs in lungs. The ingested water and air travel through the mouth, larynx, pharynx, and reach the stomach. In the passage from the stomach to the intestine, there is a vascularized region that allows for gas exchange. The blood absorbs oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. This mechanism is entirely different from traditional pulmonary respiration, showcasing how diverse and creative evolution can be. However, while evolution has brought ingenious solutions to environmental challenges over billions of years, today it faces a new obstacle: the changes caused by human activity. According to Adalberto, the adaptations that allowed the transition from water to land, such as aerial respiration and body support in a non-buoyant environment, took millions of years to develop. However, the changes we are causing to the environment are happening very rapidly, leaving insufficient time for organisms to adapt to these new conditions. The environmental impacts are evident, especially in the Amazon. Recently, we have seen scenes of rivers filled with dead fish, a phenomenon caused by rising water temperatures. Fish are extremely sensitive to temperature changes, even those living in naturally warm environments. The increase in temperature, however, exceeds the limits of what these animals can tolerate. Many die, and the few that survive are those with some resistance to heat, which will eventually pass this characteristic on to their descendants. But this adaptation process takes many generations, making it difficult for large populations to survive in a short period. The question that Adalberto raises is clear. Evolution is a slow and gradual process. The adaptations that allowed life to leave the oceans and conquer the land took billions of years. Now, with climate change, pollution, and other human actions, we are pressuring ecosystems to a point where natural evolution may not be fast enough to ensure the survival of many species. What took billions of years to shape is being threatened in just a few decades. Looking at the history of life on Earth, we see how capable evolution has been in facing challenges and creating creative solutions to ensure the survival of species. The transition from water to land was an extraordinary milestone that required complex anatomical and physiological adaptations. But the future of life on the planet now depends on how we deal with the environmental crises we ourselves are causing. Adalberto concludes with an important reflection. The evolutionary process shows us that life is resilient and adaptable, but it needs time. The frantic pace of environmental changes we are imposing may surpass the adaptation capacity of most species. What we can learn from evolution is that gradual and constant changes are part of the Earth's history. The challenge now is to find ways to mitigate the damage we are causing so that future generations can continue to tell stories about the incredible journey of life, from the deep seas to the surface of the Earth. If you found this story interesting, share, like, and subscribe to follow more content about science and evolution. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Thank you very much for watching and exploring this incredible evolutionary path with us.